All right. All right. My name is Floyd King. I'm an intern sports performance coach at Marquette University, and this is my paintball annual plan. All right. And for starters, what is paintball? Paintball is a team shooting sport. It was created in 1981 by a guy named Bob Guernsey out of New Hampshire. It is a non-contact contact sport, and by that I mean there is no contact between the individuals playing the sport, but there is contact between the individuals and the oncoming projectiles. Those oncoming projectiles are paintballs. They are plastic casings with paint in the middle. Once you're struck with one, it leaves a bright red mark to let you know that you've been hit. So paintball is usually played tournament style, 5v5. So a team of 5 versus a team of 5. Once one full team has been hit with the paintballs, that team has been eliminated. So these are usually run in tournaments. Tournaments are usually bracket style. Win and you're in, lose you're out. Funneled all the way through till you have a championship match, and those teams will go at it for the championship. As you can see, these guys wear face masks, face coverings. They have padded shirts, padded pants, cleats, gloves. A lot of it is used to muffle the pain when it comes to contact of those paintballs, because they are being shot at you from those paintball guns, which used to fire are compressed oxygen tanks or compressed CO2, which helps propel those bullets at you. And then, as you can see, these guys are using different coverings when they play. They're using their surroundings to help keep themselves away from harm, getting hit. There's a lot of change of direction that goes on in this sport, a lot of deceleration, acceleration, and these guys play in all different kinds of terrain. So they play on grass, they play on turf, they play on concrete, gravel, heavily wooded areas, mud. So they're pretty well versed when it comes to different types of terrain. So we'll move forward here. So kind of listed off a lot of these guys here. One thing I didn't touch on was a little bit of the rules. It's pretty self-explanatory. Once you've been hit, you're out of the game. But what you do after you've been hit is that you can't give up opposing players' positions, meaning that once you've been hit, you can't say, hey, he's over here. Once you're out, you're out. You're not involved in the game anymore. Moving on, what a full paintball season looks like. So what I did mine was coming from the previous season. These guys are coming on from time off. So 14 weeks away from the facility, meaning that they're at home, they're on vacation, doing whatever they want to do with family, with friends. After the time off, that 14 weeks, we get them in the off season. It's going to be 24 weeks, 12-week hypertrophy, 12-week functional hypertrophy. Our goal is to increase strength and size. Our next phase is going to be pre-competition. That pre-competition phase is going to be 7 weeks long. We're going to have a peaking phase at the end, and it's going to be an emphasis on power. Our next phase is going to be our competition season. It's going to be 8 weeks long. Our goal is to maintain strength, maintain power, and stay healthy. So some common injuries are ankle sprains. Like I stated before, they play in all different kinds of terrain. These guys are cutting. These guys are changing direction a lot. Their ankles get trapped in mud. Ankles get trapped on sticks. They tend to roll their ankles a lot. Following that, they get a lot of knee sprains because of the change of direction, putting a lot of force down on those knees when they're turning, sprinting, cutting. These guys tend to get a lot of MCL sprains, ACL sprains, PCL, and meniscus tears. And then kind of just comes with the territory. They get a lot of cuts, welts, bruises from the paintballs hitting them, cuts and welts from sliding on the turf, sliding on the grass. Kind of really non-avoidable injuries at the end. So goals and objectives, our goal is to limit injury, so strengthen areas where athletes are prone to get injured, and also in the weight room to do no harm. Our next objective is to increase speed and strength, create programs where these athletes are going to become bigger, better, faster, stronger, and then pretty self-explanatory, we want to build relationships, build rapport with these coaches, build rapport with the athletes, and then being a strength coach, you are a part of that team's coaching staff, so we are here to generate wins. All right, so in our off-season hypertrophy, we're going to be looking at a duration to be about 40 to 70 seconds. Volume is going to be high. Intensity is going to be high. So we're going to be looking at sets going to be 2 to 10. Our rep scheme is going to be 7 to 10. We're looking at percent of 1RM is going to be 65 to 85%. This is early in our off season, so that's a relative 65 to 85% because we have not 1 rep max them yet. And then we're going to be looking at days per week are going to be about 4 days. Not about they're going to be 4 days because we're not training. I mean, they're not practicing, so they can put more time into the weight room. So an example lift of off season would be, I'm going to start it off with some anti-rotational, rotational core work. I like that because I feel like it sets them up for success when it comes to our main lifts and our power movements because now their core is activated, ready to brace. After that, we're going to get into our triple extension movements. From here, we're going to move into our main compound lifts and then down into our accessory work. Our accessory work is going to be a lot of split position movements. I like that a lot because they have to generate power from those split positions when they're playing a lot. A lot of those guys, when they duck for cover, they're down on one knee, then having to generate strength out of that position. And then everything is regressed right now early in the off season because we're getting a lot of incoming freshmen, new people, and then guys that have been off for 14 weeks doing who knows what. So we're going to regress everything and generate a progression as the season moves on. Then from there, we're going to move into our off-season functional hypertrophy. So functional hypertrophy, the difference between that and hypertrophy is that we're going to be putting them under unstable conditions in those main lifts. So they're going to be having to brace a little bit more and they're going to have to stabilize those shoulders a little bit more. So duration is going to be 20 to 40 seconds. I said volume decreased and intensity raised, but when I say volume decreases, it's only slightly. We're decreasing volume just so that we can get better quality of reps. So from here, sets are going to be 2 to 10. Reps are going to be 1 to 10. Percent of 1 rep max, 65 to 85%. This should be a more in-depth number now because at the end of that hypertrophy phase, we would have done 1 rep max tests. Then from there, days per week, 4 days. They're not doing sport, so we can dedicate more time to the weight room still. And then for an example of this lift, again, we'd start anti-rotational, rotational core. Our triple extension movement, we're progressing up now from those movements from before. Our unstable main lifts, and then our accessory work, still focusing on those split movements. And then also in this time, we'd also be adding in like our jump tests, stuff like that to kind of keep them baseline. Touch on that later. And then we'll get into our preseason. Volumes coming down, intensities going up. This time period, we're going to want to be moving a lot of weight. So sets are going to go 2 to 5, reps 2 to 6. Our percent of 1 RM is going to be 80 to 90%. And then days per week, 2 to 3 days. This is our preseason, meaning that they are practicing now so that we're not going to dedicate as much time to the weight room because they're getting a lot of added workload with their practices. So example of this lift, again, rotational core, our triple extension movements, our main movement patterns, and then more accessory work. And then at the end of that preseason, we're going to get into our peaking phase. So it's a 3-week phase, 14 days total. Looking at this week 6 start date, it's probably going to be a Monday. I'd want to split it to a Monday, Friday. That's why I have a week 6.5 because we're going to do those 2 1RM maxes the same week. So that Monday, I'd like to do a heavy squat. That following Friday, would do a heavy bench. And then under there, I just have a list of a couple exercises we'd be doing on those same days. And then our week 7, we'd be doing a heavy hang clean paired with those same lifts. And then week 8, we're going to be focusing more on range of motion and mobility because we're a week from competition. So I want these guys to be 100% ready to go. I don't want any kind of fatigue leading into this first competition phase so that they're ready to compete. In season, volume is going to be down, intensity is going to be relative. By relative, I mean that it depends on their workload. If they are just getting done with a really vigorous tournament, let's say they won the whole tournament, they played 7-8 matches, we're not going to do too much in the weight room the next day because those guys have already been under a lot of stress. So sets and reps, our sets are going to look 2 to 4, reps are going to be 2 to 12. Then we're going to be looking at percent of 1 RM, 50 to 80%. Again, that's relative. We're going to be fluctuating around that time. And then days per week, 2 to 3 days still. And then an example of this lift, we're looking at about 3 days. Again, rotational, anti-rotational core movements, our triple extension, our main compound lifts, and then into our accessory work. And then from there, throughout the season, we'll be working on some speed and agility movements. So I'd like to hit a lot on deceleration work. These guys are having to sprint quick and decel quick behind these different covers to shield themselves from oncoming bullets. Also speed and acceleration work, ideally from some split positions to help them generate power and move quickly out of those positions. We do some change of direction and cutting, and then max velocity sprints in there as well. The way this is going to move, it's going to kind of undulate up and down along with what we're doing in the weight room. So if we're doing a lot of volume in the weight room, we're going to do low volume of our speed and agility. But if we're doing low volume in the weight room, we're going to do higher volume of speed and agility. Then we'll also be doing some RSI testing. RSI is reactive strength index testing. It measures how an athlete copes and performs during plyometric activities. It demonstrates athletes' ability to change from eccentric to concentric muscle contraction. So the two tests that I would be running would be the 10-5 test and the single vertical jump test. These are tests that we would be running throughout the year. So along our off season into our preseason, because then I can get a solid baseline. So what I would be using these tests for is not only the baseline to show that we are improving and getting better, stronger, more powerful, but it'll also show me in season after a very vigorous tournament that if their numbers aren't meeting that baseline, that we are fatigued. So that'll let me know if we need to dial back in the weight room. And it'll also let me know if we need to split groups, meaning that if I have a high minute player and a low minute player, we can split those into two different groups and switch up the workouts a little bit, so it's not so much workload on those specific high minute players. And then any questions?
Yeah, so you have a pretty substantial, like your off season's mainly hypertrophy, like first just being hypertrophy, then the functional after. I was just curious, like looking at the anthropometry of the individuals, like they look pretty lean.
Yeah.
What was your reasoning behind like that? Like, did you pick that over another potential like focus in your off season?
I really just wanted to focus on getting them bigger, leaner, and then so in that functional hypertrophy phase, that's going to be more like underlying strength as well. So that's why I'm decreasing the volume and kind of upping the intensity, because I want a lot more power generated in that too. So they're getting stronger. As far as size goes, I feel like these guys are going to be, I don't know. I don't know. I just feel like I did it just because that's what I was comfortable with doing. That's what I was comfortable with coaching.
I have a question.
Yeah.
How often would you expect to sprint your players? Like doing the max velocity sprinting?
Not too frequently. That'd be something that I'd probably gear towards more at the end of my preseason, because there's less volume in the weight room, so I'd really raise the volume high when it comes to the speed and agility work.
Is max velocity a key performance indicator for you?
Not really, because these guys are never really reaching max speed, because it's usually quick, short burst sprints, then it's maybe 5 to 10 meters. Never really am I having them reach max speed, so it's just something different to kind of add. That's going to get them running at high velocities.
Why is that important to you?
For me, it's just exposing them to different training. I like just kind of keeping it a little bit interesting.
In your early off season, you said like set ranges could be anywhere from 2 to 10 or 4 to 10 or whatever it was. Give me an example of what movements or methods might constitute a 10 set scheme.
10 set scheme, I'd be looking at if it's a lower rep range. That's why the set range and the rep range were both very wide. So that would be if I'm doing a hypertrophy, moving heavy weight, I would do like a 10 set of 2, a 8 set of 2, 6 set of 3, stuff like that, where they're able to keep pushing heavier weight, but not have it be so taxing, having them do 5 to 6 reps of that.
And then in your very first slide with your movement examples, you had a kettlebell hang squat on every day of the week. What's the justification on that one?
I like that just because I feel like it gets them prepped for our triple extension movements, so teaching them to get in triple extension. I like that for depth, and then getting into the kettlebell swings after that, teaching that hip hop movement.
And to clarify, the kettlebell hang squat is just the reception position of a clean but with a kettlebell?
Yeah.
What are you mentioned about relative intensity and one hour running them throughout the season. What 1 hour tests are you running? What movements?
That would end up just being our bench, squat, and our hang clean.
called it, what differentiates preseason peaking from just general training in that preseason period in terms of like volumes and intensities? What shifts?
On just those specific days, I'd say intensity is going to be extremely high because we're just doing a 1RM. And then throughout the week of those 1RMs, we're going to kind of keep volume and intensity low, just because I feel like as we're going into our competition season, I'm not trying to put as much load on them. So I feel like that designates just one day to that, let them kind of come down, one day to it, let them kind of come down, and then that last week, letting them kind of have a relaxed week before they get into competition.
One of the last questions I had, and I think you had them on your slides, but they're going reasonably quick. You talked about at the start how ankle injuries are a driver in terms of time away from the sport.
Yep.
Can you give us some examples of your ankle injury risk reduction movements that you used? I saw tib raises in there at one point, but
Yep. So I had I had tib raises in there. I had ankle dorsiflexion, like banded, and then calf raises. And those were usually incorporated weekly.